you are here. I'm glad that you, and even you are here too. So, without any further delay, let's get to it. Let's get to it. let's talk. Let's talk about what's going on and what has taken place even in the last 7 days that we all need to be aware
Hold on 1 second, Doctor. I'm having issue with you.
of. Okay. Oops.
I had another app just start playing on its own.
Oh, okay. There you are. There you are. There you
Yeah, so it has been a lot going on. Um, I was telling people that Kamala job was to fail miserably as the fall of the whore of Babylon, right?
okay.
the purple and the pearls for the inauguration was the signal and showed you where you was at in the book of Revelations.
Now, what inauguration are we talking about? The one that was Biden's inauguration, or what?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, now when she came in, we forgot that Trump was standing in front of the church with the upside down Bible. And we
okay,
forgot about Nancy Pelosi tearing up the minutes in the Senate in front of the camera,
I remember that. I remember that.
right? Those are two different contracts being closed out on the same day.
Okay.
One is the biblical contract for the blood oaths, and the other one was
Mhm.
the fraudulent contracts for the corporation to govern the people. Now,
And
what led to that was the January 6th thing.
hmm
Remember when the dude took the land flag, the one with no fringes, he sat at Pelosi's desk, right? And he was behind the Admiralty flag. That was the transfer of jurisdiction. So when you go back and listen to who sent him, you find out he was working with a shaman from the land, but he was also working with military top brass, right? We forget about that. Okay, so that was reclaiming the republic from the democratic corporation, right? Democracy is told to us in a fictitious form.
hmm
When you read all communist documents about the adding of communism into a governmental system, they all refer to it as democracy,
mm
right? So remember, Noble Drew Ali said the elephant is our friend, right? He also said, I left a watchdog for the people, and the watchdog is the elephant. And then the Hopi prophecy talked about the man in the red hat, right? That's recorded from back in 74, before Trump was even considered for the presidential campaigns, right? So the MAGA hat, the red hat, went from a white hat to a red hat to a black and gold hat. Colors is flipping the different organizational redemptions that's being made through the MAGA process. So you got tribal operations going on in the midst of standard government operating procedures.
hmm
So you watching the tribes do something, allowing the government to artificially run, and the tribes is piggybacking on that artificial narrative in order to get clues across the land in everybody's face behind their back. Only the ones who know gonna know what the codes are,
Okay.
right? So the Schumann resident go crazy when on election day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's a massive response from a solar flare.
Now, it's the solar flare. People are talking about. Some people talk about the solar flare as it would be something to be feared or to stay away from it. And I hear others saying, it's a good thing, and it's only going to, if it has a negative effect, it's only on those that don't shouldn't be here
It's
on the
gonna turn
planet.
some people's clocks off. Their time is up.
You mean they tick us like
Yeah.
right?
They life script has ran its course when that voltage go through. That's what they call the great solar flash. They're looking for it to happen any day now. Then when
So we
that
haven't had it
happened,
yet.
right. So when that happened, it's supposed to have a massive effect on the Schumann resonance because the Earth and the Sun is communicating. In order for Earth to get rid of the parasites, the UV rays have to be calibrated to the frequency required to get rid of the parasites.
And the
Earth read
parasites
the
are
human parasites by mitochondrial resonance. The mitochondrial is the powerhouse of the cell, and from the source of the power comes the source of the remedy. So it has to be able to communicate what the DNA say back to the source,
okay.
right? So then the the mitochondrial is represented in the soil of the earth. This how you could tell a better DNA match would be the DNA to the soil for us than it would DNA to a tribe.
Okay.
The people from the land have a DNA sequence that's characteristic of the soil of the land. They already know this, though. This is common scientific information that they just don't talk about. It's like they don't push it to the forefront because they don't want you to know they can test the land to see if you from it, matching it to your blood.
Hmm.
Right?
Have
That's
they
what they
been doing
used to.
any of that? Have they been doing any of that anyway? All along when they've taken a little sample of blood from the babies and
They always, anytime they taking blood, they experimenting on it and investigating the developments in the genome. That's why they
so
take so much to run the tests that require a drop.
and then all of these centers around that are paying drug addicts and everybody else to get their to donate blood. The purpose is probably more nefarious than we think.
Yeah, well, the vampires got to use the blood banks in order to stay stocked up with enough human blood to survive.
Never thought of it that way.
That's why they call them blood banks.
Because you can make a deposit, you can make a withdrawal.
Right. And the ones can go to the cash bank and then deliver to the blood bank and exchange a currency for the value in blood.
Really?
Yeah, why you think they pay you for blood? Then they also can use the cover story of emergency hospital usage to
Yes.
justify the massive amounts of blood that they collect. It ain't that many people getting transfusions on the planet. So they taking plasma, separating cells. They running the red blood cells through hemoglobin testing to determine the processing ratio of iron to oxygen in the blood that's causing the rust factor. Because eventually the iron is going to be replaced back with the magnesium, and it's going to switch the blood ratio in the hemoglobin. It's going to look more like chlorophyll, and it's going to change and alter the color of the skin. That's all part of the ancient record. That's why they paint all those deities as green, right? Because when the solar flare go, it changes the chemistry of the genome. This is why we're not 12 strand no more. It's been upgraded to now the same amount of information that required 12 strands only require two. But you don't have to be 150 feet tall no more either. When you
Let's
had
go back
12,
to that. Let's go back to that for a minute. Just let's park there just for a minute about so when they start to speculate who built what and whether or not it was there was ET help assistance, or whether or not there were giants that actually facilitated a lot was done. This when you say that, are you talking about our people, and we've come down just like computers have come down from room size to, you can hold it in your hand.
Right. That's called upgrades. That's called
Okay,
upgrades.
all
Now,
right.
the what in the Darwinian evolutionary theory, they got what's called missing links.
Okay.
This is because of laboratory intervention in the genome. When you realize
So
that we've been doing genetic engineering since the beginning of humanity, and we was creating avatars to operate in this system of 3D operational matrix.
that's my
Somebody got smart and figured out that if they gave us amnesia in the matrix, that they can recycle the matrix over and over and nobody will ever jump through the infinity loop.
Do you feel that when people have these so-called near-death experiences and they come back and they say, "I saw this, I saw that, it was beautiful. I made a decision that I needed to come back, because I wanted to see my child grow up without whatever reason." Is 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 that a just an illusionary process step in between leaving out of the body and making a decision to, like you said, when you said they don't go through the infinity loop, but they loop back into the third dimensional reality? Or is that what's happening? Or are they really in a place of decision where they could go through, come back as someone else, or make a decision to go on to a higher
Okay,
dimension? Is there no choice at that point?
look, it's like this. They got a book of life. If they start falling off the path in a book of life, they have what's called a emotionally catalyzing event of massive proportions that's written in a book of life in order to snap them out of the 3D slumber and reconnect their spiritual self to their higher consciousness.
Hmm.
If you look at their life that was in shambles most of the time before the catalyzing event, and then you look at the gratitude and the revelation and the different way they live their life after the catalyzing event. So in everybody's life, whether it's when your parents got to go, when you lose a child, those are called emotionally catalyzing events. There's nothing in this reality that you didn't know you was going to experience before you came. That's the beauty of the trick of the amnesia, to see if you can be pure enough in heart to see your way through the darkness of illusion.
And it's funny that they call it amnesia, because I've surmised that the time between the assignment of what one is going to do, the in life, and the birth, they the child generally at average spends 9 months in the womb in a liquid fluid called amniotic fluid.
Mhm.
Amniotic fluid, I said, lulls the being of the soul into a forgetfulness state of amnesia, and needs to the journey begins when the lights or whatever, when the child comes through the waters and is here to remember the assignment that they forgot in the amniotic fluid, the amniotic fluid. But I know I'm not saying it right. Uh,
Ambionic fluid.
Whatever it is, it's
Mhm.
amniotic. It's amnia because it's amniocentesis. So it's amniotic fluid. But I kind of surmise that time is the wash the memory sort of away, in a sense that it becomes a quest. The
Well,
life becomes a quest.
they discovered something in psychology that causes people to forget former lives, and it's called light shock therapy. It's where a bright light is shined in your face and it give you the effect of Men in Black with the flasher.
Hmm.
If they do it to a newborn, that's why all of the hospital delivery room got the baby under them bright ass lights.
Hmm.
is to shock the optic nerve, which causes a amnesia in the brain for a period of time. They never let the mother and the child properly pair bond because her colostrum will begin to repair the amnesia if she run the cycle through before the placenta is released. The chemicals from her colostrum going through the umbilical cord reactivates the baby's entire psyche. And then it's discovered that, oh, he's been flashed. Let me fix his optic nerve.
Hmm.
And the mother's colostrum is that's his immune system. And they replaced it with vaccines and replaced the mother's milk with Similac and Enfamil. It's all part of keeping us in a stupor.
I know that there are a lot more push towards, babies being breastfed, but, and that's not necessarily coming from the hospital side, but they actually do have people who teach them how to, how to nurse their babies and so forth. So I guess they figure a small amount. They can't do it to everybody, because we don't know what's in that stuff, the Similac and the Enfamil and all of that, whatever else is out there these days. We don't know what, it's designed to do, what chemicals are in it and what it does to the newborn or the child in its developmental stages. And that's why I'm grateful for all of the doulas out there, and the ones that not only follow the mother through the birth process, but even help them with the beginning months and stages of the
Yeah,
child.
that's where the whole concept of a nanny came from. Because the doula was the caretaker of all of the children. She overseen their birth. They would come visit and stay with her as the nanny, as the secondary mother for a mama can go do other stuff like work the fields.
Hmm.
Well, you had the big mamas, you had the nanas, which was the aunties that was the big mama to her clan. They all helping the young mothers with the children while they helping with the general labor of maintaining of the family. We lost track of who we was, but some of us back to reinform everybody of where we came from so that we can remember who we are.
Right,
Once
right.
we remember who we are, they can't run that BS on us no more. And now the youngsters got a hold of the reality of it and the receipts, and they coming up with more receipts showing proving the point.
Absolutely, absolutely. So somehow they're overcoming, or have overcome the effects of the bright light, because I'm sure many of them, were born in those regular those settings that we now know are not that are detrimental to a
Well,
child.
a lot of the young mothers now was getting advice from midwives and from doulas that they wasn't get 25 years ago.
Hmm. Right.
And then a lot of them want to do water births and home births now, you know. So the children is reflecting that because they all, when they go to the playground together, they exchanging information. We don't pay attention to the children on the playground playing because they establishing hierarchy in they age bracket in they size groups, right? They are problem solving that their minds can comprehend, and this is where they come with all of the questions all the time. They come back from the playground with all of the questions. Daddy, why is this like this? Who is God? Where is he at? Right? They was talking about that on the playground with the other children. The conversation is different now.
Yeah, you see the pictures, the little clips, the little shorts, and they're showing the babies, the infants, the newborns, and the looks on like they're not even coming back looking like babies. They're coming back looking like old men and old women. I mean, when I say old, grown men and grown women in baby form, and they have these expressions that
Like,
like
oh, I came back to this BS.
I saw one where they had like a something on it says, "This is the 13th time I've been here, and I'm here. I'm with another poor family." Something was something like that. So, but what you're seeing in the babies is, I mean, I know of some children who both of the I don't know if they got more than two now, but the first two children, I think, were talking. before when it was like 3 to 4 months old, they were talking. You know what I mean? And they were in the same bloodline, the same siblings, but they were talking. And not just goo goo gaga, but able to to have a little conversation with the parents, and of course is developed since then. And so you know that, like, when you talked about the upgrade, changes are taking place,
Yeah.
evolutionary changes are taking place, and like you said, at the what's been going on forever is the fact that if we go all the way back, and it goes further than this, but if we just go back to the book of Genesis, which is Genesis. You got the first time we generally saw that there was some um, genetic work going on, because you said they were saying, well, let us make man in our image and in our likeness and our image, whatever it is. And so we read that, but then we were taught that it was one God that did that, but you can't be a us and be one. Us
Look,
got to be at least two or
and they
more.
tell you that it's only one God in the Bible, but they tell you in the same Bible that the God of Moab, his name is Chemosh.
See, I never even seen that in all the study I've done, and that's actually in the Bible.
It's actually in the Bible.
So it seemed like that if that was the case, it would have been a case of you got the God of
He's not the only one
wisdom,
mentioned in there either.
the God of
But
like that gods were not. It was not the creator God, but it was like an Elohim, one of the Elohim,
mhm.
as opposed to a creator God. And then you have the schizophrenic appearing God who creates, loves, and then says kill everything, and the women and children, rape the women, take the women, kill the men, do. And then you think, is God crazy? And then when you read the other books that the Bible we know now has come from, you get to you're getting a Yahweh versus a Jehovah, or an Inky versus an Enlil. If you get deep in it, so you got one God saying, you and that woman, we to put you together, you on a timetable, you get together, every so many weeks, and you can get it on, and whatever you can do, because we need to create more of you. Then you got the other gods stepping in, saying, who they call a snake or a serpent, saying, listen, you can do what you want to do with who you want to do it with. You're not bound to this. And matter of fact, you can put some clothes on, and then when this other God shows back, who told you were naked? So you see, it looks like confusion. And then you have the same one God saying, I'm jealous, and you should have no other God before me. So if there's no other God to be before him, that makes no sense right there. But people gloss right over it.
So the God Chemosh is mentioned several times. Judges 11:24.
Hmm.
First Kings 11:7 say King Solomon built a temple to Chemosh on the Mount of Olives.
You see that?
Second Kings 23:13, King Josiah destroyed the temple to Chemosh as part of a purge of 9 Yahwistic religions.
Right. So
Second
Yahweh,
Kings,
was that would that be
Yahweh.
Yahweh? Yeah,
Anything.
but would that,
Right. So Yahweh, as he come out of the Sumerian pantheon,
right.
right? Now, a lot of the other deities is in there too. I'm gonna go over some of them with you, but the last one is Jeremiah. Wait a minute, no, it ain't. Second Kings 3:26-27 say a Moabite king offered his son as a sacrifice to Chemosh in the hopes of winning a military victory.
And how do you spell Kimash? If anybody wants to look it up,
Chemosh.
C H
Jeremiah
M O
E.
S M O S H.
Yeah. Okay, and the last one is Jeremiah 48:7. It say Jeremiah prophesied that Chemosh and his followers would be carried into captivity and brought shame to his worshipers. Right. And then it says Chemosh was the God protector of the Moabites, while Yahweh was the national God of the Israelites. The Bible portrays Chemosh as a false God and Yahweh as the only true God. So you got another guy called Adad in the Bible. He's commonly referred to as Baal Hadad. That's one of the sons of Enlil,
Okay.
right? Now in the Bible, they translate his name to mean the Lord thy God.
Okay.
So it's telling you, they got you thinking they still talking about Yahweh, and they talking about Baal Hadad.
Mm,
They translate Baal as Lord. Baal is the Canaanite god, right?
mm,
So all of these different Adonai is another name for Enki, right? So now you got another different Anunnaki god,
okay. Yeah.
right? Then when they talk about I was thought my stars be above the kingdom of God or something like that about in Isaiah. That's a
Isaiah.
woman talking about her son. And they telling her that her son ain't the righteous one, and she letting them know he the righteous one and the rightful one. And they telling us that this is a story about some devil named Lucifer. But
Mm,
Lucifer mean light bringer, the one that bring right. So in Greek culture, he's called Prometheus, right? He stole
flame
the
of
flame of the gods and gave it to the mortals.
yeah.
But what is the flame of the gods? Knowledge. And this is why the Baphomet got a torch on top of his head. It's the torch of knowledge, reaching to what's called Ein Sof. Ein Sof means vibration of Sophia or vibration of wisdom. So now you're talking about a frequency and the vibration. And that's the Holy Sephira, right? So now we're talking about a arc degree at the top.
Mhm.
All this stuff is tied back in through these biblical narratives that they gave us as metabytes of information to be operated upon at a later date. Because the people who's telling the story obviously don't know the story they telling and where it came from. So it took years of different people researching the history in order to put it all together.
True.
But then you had people came in with what's called Victor's history. Victor's history is military operational historical narrative in order to control the people you conquer with the least amount of resistance from the conquered people.
And
So
don't
this
they
is
say, yeah, that whoever is victorious gets to write the story
yeah,
and
the victors write the history.
write the history. Yeah.
Right. So now the way that they keep us from rebelling about their presence on the land is to disassociate us from the land. So the Oxford, uh, no Notre Dame, where the academic slave narrative was hatched at, gave them a operational manual for disassociating a group of people from the land by telling them they came from somewhere else that has nothing to do with them, and you find a similarity between the two people to convince them otherwise. So they use skin color and hair texture.
Right. 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 So yeah. And again, they also put everything in an Eastern context when I've always had this burning, question about where do I fit into this? Where do we, or not just me, but where do the people in America, at America, where do we fit into the narrative? So everything, the way they rewrote their revisionist, theory, where they do things, they put everything in an Eastern context. It happened over there, and there's no real as they try to figure out how they was going to connect us to how we got over here. But the one thing I was telling somebody the other day in terms of where we come from, I said anybody else who supposedly commits a crime, if you will, punishable by deportation in America gets shipped back to the country of origin, except for us, unless you came in here from Africa in the recent times with with a visa or something. I'm talking about the majority of people who look like us don't get we get sent right straight to jail which is part of the prison industrial complex. And nobody, if that's the case, we should be deported. But you can't deport us because we're already in our on our homeland. That's one that in and of itself needs to be brought up as why is that to them? We know why, but we need to let them know that we know why that
No,
they don't want us.
that's part of our war, domestic warfare. That 99% of the general population was totally unoblivious, been fighting their whole life right in front of them without their knowledge.
Right.
Right? The government already declared that we was the enemy, the people of the land. They had bounties on us for our scalps. And how do you know it's them? Because of the woolly hair. But
Mhm.
then they turned around and tell us that the people they brought over here, Mongolians they brought over here and sicked on us, right? They telling us they was the Indians doing the scalping, right? But it was really the settlers brought them people with them as servants.
Mhm.
And this is why they have been privy to a lot of our cultural norms because somebody had to maintain the culture when they ostracized us on our own land. Right? So they discover during the wars the character of us as the people of the land. And many of the ones that they brought over here from Mongolian wars with the Huns, the Vedics, and the Khans. That's who all of the Ottoman Empire, the early Roman Empire. This is who they was fighting, and this is who they made slave villages out of. And this is where they would go and take their children and do whatever they wanted to do with them. Because they was not looked at as human, they was called goyim,
There
meaning
you
chattel, meaning chattel, as in the herds of the human animals, right? So they didn't have any regard for anybody that was not from their bloodline stock of Enlilites,
Mhm.
right? Then they eat us, literally. Going back to the blood banks and the vampires sucking the blood. We wore wolf pelts in war as a camouflage that we used to use to hunt. You had people from the old Mississippians that roamed the plains. They wore bison pelts, and this is why the American government said for every time they kill a bison, they kill one of us because they thought that the bison turned into us at night and attacked them. But
Is
we
that
was
where like
walking.
the Skinwalker thing comes from? Skinwalker?
That's yes, that's where it's come from.
Okay.
So they telling them that when they take the pelts off, we look like kinfolk. This is where the werewolf term lichen come from. They look like kin, but they not.
Right.
They wear wolves. The whole vampire wars with the werewolves, as they told you in that movie Twilight, was against the natives of the land and the colonizers that looked the same, which showed itself as the George Washington challenge. And everybody else was supposed to ostracize both sides so that they could stay out of it. So this is where you use your doctrine of racism. That's called Protocols of Zion. You apply that method along with torture tactics and false history. And now the people don't know who to trust
That's true.
because they don't know how to recognize the sardines in the can as different fish. They think we all the same fish.
Absolutely. And that is interesting though, when people think that one kind of fish is just a whole bunch of little fish crammed together and pickled up and whatever, mustarded up or whatever you do to them, but they're not all of the same. And
There
that's
is
a
there is no real
it's not
small
even
tiny.
called that.
Yeah,
It's not a fish
it's
finger.
named after a place over in Sardinia, is what it's named after, and that's
Okay.
where they practice taking the little fish and pickling them and making them into uh, stored stock.
Right. Right.
Right. This is same thing with anchovies. It all come from over there. That's Italian.
But isn't it true that the sardines, though they call them sardines, there's a whole bunch of different fish, and they're not like us. They call us black, Negro colored, lump us all together, but that's not the truth. That's not factual. But that's the label that's been put on them. The label that's been put on our people.
Yep.
Very,
So they
very
put it.
similar.
They put us all in prison together and just say prisoner.
Prisoners, right? Inmates. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
But everybody in there, some people,
are
I didn't been
innocent.
in. Look, a whole lot of people innocent. Some people got overkill on the sentencing, and some people deserve to be there. They should not be in the roaming around free in the world. I've been in there with them. I done looked in the eyes of some very, very, very terrifying individuals. No soul whatsoever.
Mm,
They have no remorse or no misgivings. They just as much give you a hug as cut your throat. But you just can't keep people trapped in a cage. That's not normal human behavior. It's just they start ruining them as children on purpose so that when they become adults, they can't function in the society. Most of them come from horrible backgrounds. And a lot of them told me, and I can't unhear that stuff. I was like, man, why you have to tell me that? Now I got to be haunted by the same thing that haunts you. To think that the one human would do that to a child. Now I got to live with it just like you do. I didn't want to hear that. Now I can't unhear it. I can't unknow what you told me. I done had cellmates that can't sleep at night because they get tormented in their dreams.
mm.
Tormented from the dirt they did.
From what they did, yeah, yeah, I can
Yeah,
imagine.
we did so much dirt. I had one bunkie. He wouldn't even. He was in there for attempted murder, but he had beat all of the murder cases that they had arrested him for. He had like 17 murders,
Wow.
and he had an outdate.
Does that mean
And
he had time when he was gonna get released?
yeah, I had more time than him. He had something like 8 years. I had 18. But when after he was in the room with me for about a week, I said, man, they don't need to let you back out on the street. You horrible. There's a whole lot of them in there worse than him. The people that care about their loved ones in there, you should see about them. Because the ones that don't get seen about, the staff doing bad, worse than the inmates.
Wow.
If you know how to take care of yourself, you make alliances and you protect it among the peer group, the inmates. But if you don't have people checking on you, you fool for the officer because you have nobody to tell outside that care about you.
So you have these vicious men and women who are supposed to be peacekeepers who actually have their play out their darkness on the inmates in there because they can because they're in a
Yeah.
position of
Well,
authority.
the slogan is power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
the guards is like gangbangers. And they got in most of the places they got special forces in there. We don't know this. The people out here don't know this. They some of them they call them the goon squad, the head busters, the 6'1s, right? Because everybody got to be over 6'1s. They call them cap splitters, the wrecking crew. Depending on where you at, they got a different name from them all over the country, but it's the same thing. Their only mission is to come in and wreak pain on the inmates by slapping them upside the head with axe handles and billy clubs, spraying them with gas. We don't know that stuff. Regular people don't know the stuff that go on to the inmates in there, as they are prisoners of war in the first place because all of the judges is here illegally. The
Mm.
police is a foreign occupying military force. The sheriff is supposed to be arresting their ass. But the last time the sheriffs tried to arrest the police department, it was such a public disaster that they had to stop the practice because you're not, the police is a slave catching force dispatched out of London, England. This is why the police that's discovering this now is given the opportunity to resign before they declare martial law and clamp down on the. When they told you that the military was given permission to use deadly force in support of the local law enforcement, that's because the National Guard has been sheep dipping special forces agents out of different branches of the military to support them because some of these billionaires and millionaires have private armies. And when you go get them, you need an army. You need a Navy SEAL team. You need an Army Ranger force. The National Guard, from their standard operating procedures, is not prepared for special forces combat. So they had to put the bill in front of them in order to make it a law, in order for the other branches of the military that's been sheep dipped by the National Guard to be an operational force in backing up the National Guard and rounding up all of the dirty players.
Dirty players. Let's go back to pre, like, well, 2020, or in that period of time when they were talking, things used to drop all the time with letters. The 17th letter of the alphabet used to always, remember, that was coming out, and they were giving all of this info out, and intel, I guess they were calling it, with regards to who was getting exposed and who was getting processed and who was getting sent to, you know, places, that were designed to house criminals of their type. Was that just mere propaganda, or
Okay, they
did
just they just put a bill before Congress. It's a continuity in the absence of 100 and more senators and congressmen. They obviously know that it's going to be at least short 100 senators and congressmen when the revelation comes out about the tribunal. So they have to cover the process of government ahead of the disclosure to the people.
Mhm. so
Right?
so the the government, but the current administration, I mean, or the current Congress, did this because they know amongst their own selves that some of them are going down, is what you're saying, and so they
No,
felt like a duty.
no,
No,
no.
okay.
So okay, so let me tell you, they was running a psychological operations through the political arena using the presidential office as the focal point of a psychological operation so that most of the people will never figure out that there's an active hot war taking place underground all over the earth.
So we're talking
So,
about the tunnels and stuff,
right.
or
So they've been special forces teams in an alliance around the world to go into underground tunnels and get the people that's been stealing children.
okay.
They've been feeding them to what's called archons. Archons are reptilian humanoid creatures that live underground. They do not come above ground because they were seen too much in what they call the Dark Ages.
Hmm.
They had tunnels that took them from Buckingham Palace in London, took them to the Vatican in Italy, that took them to the Swiss Alps. In Switzerland was the largest underground community of those beings. They've been since cleared out because now they're doing tours of the underground tunnels in Switzerland as the most expansive underground tunnel network of any country. It's the description that they're using to get people to come and look. But it was people living there for hundreds of years before they cleared them out.
Hmm.
What they did with them, I don't know.
Now, isn't Switzerland where the folks that look like us but are not like us that have been in charge for many years were held up or operating from.
Switzerland, yes. That was the hive headquarters of those beings.
Mhm.
That's they hive headquarters. They have sub hives around the world. Normally they live in gated communities, but they're able to walk among us because they look like us. And then
Now,
they be telling us kill Whitey and all the time he Whitey.
mm,
That's to keep us always fighting with each other so we can't never overthrow the real enemy.
well, I heard that the a few years ago when they had the fires in California, I think the place was called Paradise Valley, Paradise something. They were saying that when you talk about the reptilians that don't, that stay underground, that these there was a community in Paradise, Paradise, California. Remember
Mm-hmm.
things were
That's
burning
what I'm
and
talking about.
they said that they were have a sort of they looked human, but they had teeth. They had teeth that they had to wear crowns and things over. They had a special dentist that was there for them. They had special times for these people to go to the market and so forth. They had houses above ground, but when they would go into the house, they would go underground from these houses, and that the targets that they were the targets, if you will, of the the what do you call it, the dues. Yeah, they call them the dues, right? Direct DEWs. The dues were directed at them to get rid of them who lived underground. Went in like they were going into a regular house. They would take their their
Dentures
whatever,
out.
yeah, dentures out and so forth, and be themselves, but they would go underground from what was looked like an above ground house they didn't
So
really live
anybody can look this up. They told us the cover story was that they was doing war games in California. And that was the reason why there was all of that bombs and shooting going on.
in.
That's
Hmm.
not the truth of what was going on. That's the story they told us because too many people heard it.
Okay.
So I think that was in 2020.
Somewhere, yeah, somewhere back around there. But but I was told there was this reptilian community that
Mm-hmm.
they had special privileges, but they were in the community for a long, long time, but they were the targets of this. And I see it here. Somebody said, yes, Paradise said I lived that event, Dr. G. It was horrific. Here's somebody's, so it was really. Here's another one. Oh no, not that one. That's crazy. I live in California, was in Paradise for a couple of weeks. Yeah, so it was things going on. I don't know whether they were an experiment of living, in with that they decided they didn't want any more of. You know what I mean? And the government or whoever the so-called powers that be were decided, like we'll get rid of them.
Yeah.
But
So
on the subject of reptilians, before you go anywhere else, what do you think about that so-called costume that Kim K had on that looks so realistic? Because a lot of folks talked about that. It was just too over the top, real like was is a is a costume what she's wearing most of the time, and she showed her real self. What do you say to that? I mean, maybe you don't.
you remember when Aaliyah played in the movie called The Queen of the Damned?
Yes, I remember that movie. Don't remember that
The,
movie seeing it, but I remember the movie.
the character she was playing was Kim Kardashian.
Oh, really? Mm,
Kim Kardashian ain't regular.
mm, okay.
And this made Aaliyah hot in the Hollywood circles because they didn't ever want that role to be taken by somebody that would know how to imitate her. Well, they call it her true form,
Okay.
right? And they say Aaliyah did the job too well. So Kim Kardashian came out on the at one of them award shows dressed like the Queen of the Damned because she now have to identify who Aaliyah was talking about in the public face to see who gonna catch it.
Hmm.
So if you look up Queen of the Dam slash Kim Kardashian, it'll come up side by side comparison.
Okay.
She's just showing you her true colors. She ain't no good. Salute to Kanye for diving on the bear. Somebody had to hold the bear till we could figure out how to kill that son bitch.
Well, he seems to be a very erratic. Who knows?
That's character role called Hayoka Chief War Dancing. The
Okay.
goal is to make regular people think that you totally erratic and insane. But in the course of that, you have to reveal great truths. And he did it.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of revealing truths, I mean, Kat said that this was going to be 2024, which is almost over. It's going to be the year of disclosure. I was clipping through something the other day and saw um, I want to say it may have been a TikTok or Instagram with Nicki Minaj, Mrs. Petty, as she must be called, and Ray J, for instance. And she like totally decimated him in the sense that he was kowtowing to her, and she told him not to call her Nikki. She told him she was Mrs. Petty, and then she started asking him or saying to him, asking him certain things to pull out whether or not he was double dipping, back and who he was and why was he trying to. He said he wanted to be a part of her. I guess her. Does she have a label or something? He wanted to go, and she totally in public made him look like. And I'm thinking, why is he sniveling like that? Because what's happening, with this system? I mean, like I said, there's so many things, like I said, that came out to distract us. He was one of them. Diddy's been a big part of it. All the people that are coming out to distract us, but I think the main question is, what are we being distracted from?
Some of
What
that
going?
some of that is not distraction.
Okay.
Some of it is not distraction. But because we love gossip so much, all that stuff is coded still to get the gossipers to spread the rumor.
Hmm.
And they still telling the code, but they don't know it. Puffy ain't
Yeah.
the target.
Who is the target?
All of them pedophile executives, Clive Davis, Larry Cohen, there's a whole bunch of them. They all
Mhm.
Clive financed Diddy parties, and ain't nobody talking about that. Everybody know that Clive used to give him the money for the parties
Right.
because he was the director. He was telling Diddy everything that needed to be done. He ain't getting away
Hmm.
what he did to Phyllis Hyman, for what he did to Whitney Houston, Angela Bofield, and I could keep going, but he ain't
Yeah.
getting away. He think because he old and shriveled up, they ain't gonna figure out a way to give his ass the guillotine. He got another thing coming. Same with Larry Cohen, Ted Fields, what's the Tommy Mottola.
Hmm.
They ain't getting away. But somebody had to be as depraved as them in order to get them to let their guard down enough to drag them out.
But like like trying to say that and I'm gonna get off the Diddy thing, but they were saying Clive Davis, and they then even said Andre Harrell, I guess his name, was responsible for grooming Diddy.
Creating.
But when you look back at his history and see that he went to a Catholic all boys Catholic school where the priests were known pedophiles and was exposed, the likelihood is that I called him, he was an altar boy, and I said what he was actually an altered boy, and it happened at that level, and so he was just right for whatever was there in the entertainment field because he had already had his grooming done through his formative years of going to the school.
In the Matrix, the I think it's Matrix Revolution, they had these people called the Mandalorians. And they was taking this cat to put on the guillotine. right? And Neo grabbed the cat before they can pull the lever on the guillotine. And he was telling them there got to be a point that you're not willing to go, right? Otherwise, you sell your soul at that point, right? It's got to be a line that you're not willing to cross. When you get a person that's willing to cross all of the lines, that's your crash dummy. You let him go crash out because he's
Right.
gonna crash out anyway. But let him crash out with a purpose, right? They use every piece on the board for what it's useful for, and we all pieces on the board that's being played in real time. And so
Right.
we don't see what they doing. So you needed a buck dancing cracker like Trump because now we can get the opportunity to serve up the political distraction while we doing everything we supposed to do to reclaim the land. They worrying about who gonna win the presidency. I'm trying to kill the office.
You don't know. Well, they say he's the last the last trumpet, the last president, all that stuff. So perhaps, and a couple people are saying something, and I agree with this. How let me see. Yeah, it said that Quincy died unscathed. Darn shame, but it's starting to come out now because they're starting to bring up stuff about. Well, Tevin Campbell is probably the biggest one that hits as far as
That's the
being
main
blatantly
one I was mad at Quincy about what he did to Tevin.
Tevin. Yeah. But you got to think in terms. Did he do anything to Mike? Did he do anything to Will? Because they're all tied to him, and who else?
Yeah.
Who knows that?
Well, Mike is a unique situation. Um, he always had people around him. So if somebody did something, it was a whole clique of people in on it. Wasn't no one person. Quincy wasn't just gonna slide up on Mike and start molesting him. That wasn't gonna happen. But if he had a team of molesters around him that worked together, now that's possible. Because there was always been a team around Mike since he was little.
Hmm.
So if he got molested, the whole team was in on it.
Now in the book, thanks for the memories, which is a PDF out there. I can't think of that lady's name, but thanks for the memories book. I distinctly remember when I read that book, the woman who was part of it, was a victim of MK. She said that she remembered being taken to the opening of when they first appeared. I think on the Ed Sullivan show. I believe it was the
Mm-hmm.
Ed Sullivan show. That those she said they were all I think she says molesters. She might say sodomized backstage. That she says it in the book because she lists some other folks that she says were MK Ultra, but she called the book "Thanks for the Memories" because one of the people she was handed off to, and according to her account, and I'm just saying this is for educational purpose only, but she says was Bob Hope, and that's how she ended up at at the Ed Sullivan show when they were there. She was backstage, and she said they were all sodomized before they went out on the stage. And she lists some other things that happened with other people, but this stuff that we're hearing about is so old. And when I say old, it's been going on ever since they created their Hollywood and their industries. That seems like that was part of the base plan of those industries was to incorporate that kind of abuse in order to get control. Because once you
Well,
get that, I heard a woman said, you get to the root chakra. That's where she was saying that Diddy was drawing his power from this backdoor situation she would do with these, fear, pain, and whatever, and the root chakra. That's why they were doing all
yeah,
those,
That's Babylonian sex magic.
okay, I don't know what it's called, but that's what they're
It's
doing.
Babylonian sex magic, and it's straight out of the Mishnah and the Talmud.
It's in there,
Yeah,
Lord.
it's even concealed in the Old Testament,
Mm,
right? But it's Babylonian sex magic, and the goal is if you have an heir to the throne as the prince, you're supposed to sodomize him to make him unfit to rule. That's in the Sumerian tablets. Once you
Okay.
sodomize, you unfit to rule, right? And they not only do that, they also do it to control the victim, right? They're creating some kind of artificial link with the victim where they can't break out of that psychological trauma. It's the worst trauma bind you can possibly do to a person.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's yeah, that's what they've been doing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, their time is up. The gig is up because they wasn't gonna keep doing this stuff in secret and ain't nobody gonna figure it out. Because you got energy signatures that saying, wait a minute, if what I'm seeing is right, that would mean this is taking place in the dark. Right? So when you're looking at the decay of society, that's entropy. That means it's coming to its close. So as the society starts to break down, it breaks down in a predictable pattern based on historical record. And these is all designed to function within a cycle called an age or an eon,
Hmm.
right? When people be talking about the end of the world ain't going nowhere. Your ass might, but the world ain't going nowhere,
Right.
right? So it's not the end of the world, it's the end of a type of civilization that's no longer functional for the greater benefit of the people. So now you have a lot of teachers emerging from silence that wouldn't have never been speaking before, using alternative outlets to deliver information, right? And these alternative outlets serve for also public notice according to the court standard. Timestamped, dated in an archivable format. Notice to agent is notice to principal. Once it's on the record, they can't delete it. They can try everything they can to cover it up, but once the people know. The gig
Right.
is up, right? But now we at the part where something got to trigger the great disclosure.
And is that on Trump's agenda? I mean, I know he. I don't know where he is with that, but talk was at the first his first go round, he was he had done some things. He did do some things that a lot of people didn't seemingly were unaware of that were more beneficial to us than a lot of folks knew. It seemed like he had done some things, but it was swept under the rug as far as public knowledge.
Yeah, well, it don't matter what he did last time or didn't do, because this time
Mhm.
it's all coming down. It's all coming out. What was done in the dark has to come to the light. Just the
And
age of
no matter
Aquarius,
how
where
far
those
back, yeah, doesn't matter how far back it was done, right? So
if the truth need to be known for the people to recover and move forward in a better social standard, then they need to know,
right, right,
right? So if they don't understand at the beginning, you have to put it in terms that they understand. And the sad part about it is we only understand high gossip and extreme trauma. The traumatic event could be the catalytic event. And it don't look good for people that ain't got the school message yet.
can you expound on that?
They doing everything they can to force parents to stop participating in the educational system, but the parents is determined to keep it there, which puts the children at risk to Manchurian candidates, what's
Right.
commonly known in MK Ultra as a hypno assassin. If you look back over the school shootings, there is almost all of them, the majority of them, was under the care of a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Many of them was on Prozac and Ritalin, one or the other or both. All of those are written about in the MK Ultra files, but most people have never read it. So they don't know that these people are being hypnotically programmed to do these nefarious things. And it leaves the parent at risk because the parent thinking they're getting their child help. And what they doing is listening to these doctors that's ruining their child in the name of healthcare, mental
Mm.
health, programming them to use to do dastardly deeds in order to further the agenda of the corporation to the detriment of the tribes. As long as we keep thinking that this is just accidentally happening and we not looking at the patterns, we won't never see the consistency in the philosophy that they using as a conquering philosophy to subjugate us. So they use the false flag event when the people don't pay attention. Then they use what they call a emotionally significant false flag event. Don't mean the event don't happen. It just means that the government had more control over the event than you could possibly imagine.
Right.
Right? And they will let people die. Your life don't mean nothing to these people.
Collateral
They
damage.
collateral damage. It's war. And they trying to fight the war using psychological methods. And that's to keep the people from realizing that they in a war and that the war is being fought against them. Therefore, they have no defense.
So are you saying that because when we talk about the the weapon is still loaded, so are we in the crosshairs of something else that we need to be more aware of, that we need to get ourselves geared up to fight this war, instead of being just a lame
It's
duck
not
out
going.
there
It's not
sitting
going to
duck.
play out where all of us have to participate in the fight. It's going to be so precise when they go. But the part that's to get the people to wake up is the part I'm more worried about than the aftermath fallout of the war. Because if they don't get your attention one way, they got a real evil and vile way to get your attention.
Hmm.
And it normally involves mass casualties like 9/11.
Hmm.
Right? So if once you become aware, you can do something to protect yourself. But as long as you walking around in la la land thinking everything is milk and honey, then you're gonna walk right into their traps. The reason they call them a trap because you ain't supposed to see them
Right.
till it's too late. If a bear knew what a bear trap was, he wouldn't put his foot in there.
Well, here's something. Question. It said, Rod, it's been rumored that 350 FEMA trucks were spotted the day before yesterday in Upper Michigan. Could you talk about why that could be?
Well, it depends on which side of FEMA. FEMA right now is in the middle of a civil or internal conflict between the tribes taking over FEMA and the deep state operatives that still have access to FEMA equipment and resources, trying to use it to muscle their way back in. It ain't gonna work. They ain't gonna win. But that's what's going on with FEMA. FEMA trucks normally is transporting goods or supplies of a medical nature or something like that for emergency purposes. But what they are moving for in Michigan, I don't know.
Right. So there was some question that came up that I looked at one program where the lady was saying that she is a government contractor, and as such gets a chance to read, when they put out for the various things that the government's contracting for, and that the government was doing, trying to get those that could build these what will seem like FEMA camps. But what I've been questioning lately in the East Coast in this area, and I don't know whether it's happening where any of you all are out there, let me know. They're building around here in the Delaware, uh, in New Jersey area in particular, because that's the place I've been traveling. These massive, what looks like storage facilities or places where warehouses that look like they're like half a football field length, and they're putting these, and they're putting up, they're taking all the land that was farmland, and they're putting up these. I'm thinking, how can, what do they have to store that they would build these huge, they have the big bays, but that's the bays could be where they back a truck up that has, or one of those things they call it containers and whatever. What in the heck? I don't know if they do it, if anybody where you are, they're building all of these warehouses. And I just feel like somehow there's a nefarious reason behind these massive warehouses. I mean, coming up like
Okay,
it's
one thing that you got to take into account, Dr. G, is when they do martial law and they shut everything down, ain't no grocery store is gonna be open.
hmm
And the National Guard is gonna be responsible to feed people, and they have the food resource, the same resources they had when they started Focus Hope. You remember how they had all of that food stockpile? Well,
I
they've been
remember.
preparing through this is one of the FEMA initiatives for the continuity of government process. They've been preparing to shut the old government down. And when that shut down, the bank shut down, it's going to be a period of time before the new system becomes active.
So you
During that,
saying this is food storage or supply storage places or
it's possible. It could be both food and supplies because the National Guard is going to be going door to door delivering rations to people who don't. You have the people that was preppers, but most people wasn't.
hmm
So the one of the FEMA resources that was used was to be able to create a resource network to feed people for the martial law period.
when do you think feel that the martial law will actually go into effect?
Whenever
Where do you
this
see it?
false flag event take place, I don't know what it is or when it's going to happen. But if you look at the stars, you can get a good clue.
hmm
I haven't looked recently to see when a significant catalyzing event should be taking place according to the alignment. But I know right now we going through a whole lot of energy transfer and convergence. So we're seeing a lot of things come back full circle, but they don't look the same when they come back. They look the same but different,
Okay.
right? So, but once it comes through, it's through. But the people don't want to become aware enough where the significant catalyzing event, the shock and awe, is not required. They still walk around in la la land. They still thinking that presidential elections is real. And they still thinking that celebrity is important people when all they is for entertainment.
That's right.
They just as effed up as most of us, if not worse. Most of them worse. The average person don't want to be involved in those shenanigans. Not on their own accord. You need to be coaxed into some of that stuff, right? You need to be put in the middle of a peer group of a whole bunch of depraved individuals to compel you to participate in the depravity. That's why they isolate who they bring around. They know what they doing.
Hmm.
We just don't know what they doing enough to protect ourselves from them doing it to us, or we wouldn't keep sending our children talking about we gonna make them a celebrity
Yeah.
with no parental supervision. I'm just gonna give my kid to this person. I ain't know him from Iraq and Iraq because he a producer. What is he producing? No, I'm not doing it. You want my son to sing? I'm gonna be sitting right there in the studio with him, especially when he an underage singer.
hmm
And if you're a grown man, he already know how to protect himself because I'm a teacher. But if you're a child, I'm not Bieber age, Usher age, no Lil Wayne age. No, nigga, you not taking my child. I don't know you like that. Them kids was too young to be put in that um
Situation, yeah.
piranha tank.
Yeah, I saw
Oh,
another thing. I didn't know what going on, but there was a I forgot what's called the rap game. Looking at some old things, and it actually was what is that guy's name? Oh my god, he's a producer. He went with Janet Jackson for a little while. Oh my
talking about
gosh,
Jermaine Dupri.
Jermaine Dupri, and I was like, oh my goodness, he had children, but lots of their parents seemed to have been there. But when I was telling an individual about his history with um, I believe it was Crisscross. The group was called Crisscross, and the one young man ended up, you know, deleting himself. They didn't believe me. Oh, that's just a bunch of. I'm saying, okay, whatever. You think these people are, that they're so morally right in a corrupt system. It's almost impossible to be not to be corrupt because of the system was designed for that. It was designed from corruption. So we, like you said, we I don't think too many people are maybe looking to get their children into entertainment now with all of the publicity. Maybe
You
now
still
that it's
got,
out.
you still got people look at their child as a cash cow and don't see him as their child.
Well, they something that in sports. I mean, because I got a grandson that my son's, but he's good, but it's really good. But I don't, maybe he wants to be something else. Not because those things. It's a whole bunch of good players out there. You know what I mean? So